Well, hi there, and welcome to the Ernest Tubb Record Shop. You know, I've talked with many country music fans right here over this counter throughout the past 20 years that we have had the Ernest Tubb Music Shop. And many of them ask me usually about the same questions, going back to, well, how did I get started in the country music business and how old I was and so forth. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to try to answer some of the questions most asked most often, I should say. First, how old was I? Boy, that's a long time ago. I was about 19 years old in San Antonio. That's back in 1933, and I got my first job singing on the radio over station KONO, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas. And another question that we're asked very often is who was my inspiration? Most artists do have an inspiration in the business, and mine happened to be the late and great Jimmie Rodgers, America's blue yodeler, and referred to as the singing brakeman. We call him the father of country music. He was my inspiration. And then the next question they asked me, how did you get on records? That's a big one too. Everybody goes about it a different way. I happen to be lucky enough to meet Mrs. Jimmie Rodgers, the widow of the singing brakeman, who lived in San Antonio at the same time that I did. And she was good enough and thought enough of me and my possibilities to try to help me. So she got me an audition with the RCA Victor Recording Company, and I made some records. That was in 1936 when Mrs. Rodgers got me the audition with Victor. The records didn't sell, but at least I had my chance. But Mrs. Rodgers still didn't give up. She still had faith in me, and she kept working on the different record companies. And then in 1940, Decca Records agreed to audition me, and they did, and recorded me. Back in April the 4th, 1940 in Houston, Texas, I made my first Decca record. And it wasn't Walk in the Flow of You that most people think it is. It was a song, two songs that I had written, I'll Get Along Somehow on one side and My Blue-Eyed Elaine on the other side. That was actually my first Decca record. And that was in 1940, April the 4th, that I made that record. Walk in the Flow of You didn't come along until about 1941. I wrote this one, which happened to turn out to be my biggest selling all-time record and paved the way for many other things. For instance, I got to go to Hollywood, do 2 Western pictures with Charles Starrett. And then eventually, they heard about me here in Nashville, Tennessee at the Grand Ole Opry, and it led the way to the Opry, which of course was my greatest ambition, which is the greatest ambition I think of most everybody in the country music field. Actually, I got one of the questions asked, who helped me get to the Grand Ole Opry? Well, Mr. Joe Frank, the late J.L. Frank, and people referred to him now as Uncle Joe Frank. He was the one that was responsible for bringing me here to the Grand Ole Opry. That was in December 1942 as a guest to be on Roy Acuff's portion of the Grand Ole Opry, which was the network there, the NBC network. And but I was only brought in as a guest, and actually I learned later that Mr. Frank, Uncle Joe, talked him into letting me stay for 4 Saturday nights as a tryout. And actually, I didn't know whether I was going to get to be on the Grand Ole Opry or not, but I was here for 4 weeks, and then, fortunately, I've been here ever since. And that was actually 43 is when I say I started on the Grand Ole Opry. That's 25 years ago, a quarter of a century. And, you know, believe it or not, they never actually hired me yet. I don't know how I'm still here, but I am.